Hey there, Normies. Today we're talking about the games of Bethesda Softworks, from Fallout to the Elder Scrolls and everything in between. So whether you're the Dragonborn or the Lone Wanderer, hopefully you haven't taken an arrow to the knee or gotten radiation poisoning recently. So grab your bottle caps and your wheels of cheese, your skooma and psychojet, and whistle for your trusty best friend Dogmeat, and join us on a journey through the games of Bethesda.
Another settlement has seen word that they need our help.
Cajitas wares, if you have coin.
All of this just works.
I used to be an adventurer like you, and I took an arrow in the knee.
Oh, come now, don't play the fool. Vegas has fools enough.
Ayo, Bethesda boys. Welcome back to Normies Like Us. I'm Joe. That was a very special introduction from our friend Jacob.
Hey, good to be here.
And this is the Skooma King, Mike, out here.
This is Khajiit Colin if you have coin.
Only if you have coin, not otherwise.
So we're out here and we're talking Bethesda. Jacob, thank you for joining us. And thank you for kind of spearheading the effort to document this Bethesda stuff.
Yeah, Jacob, you're a big fan of all things Bethesda Studios. You were a real pioneer for this episode. Got all the notes together. Really appreciate all that work.
Yeah, I was really pushing to talk about some games that I love and, flawed games maybe, but...
Ooh,
they're definitely flawed.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think Bethesda, as a company, is normie?
Well, if you start all the way back in the origins of the Elder Scrolls and stuff, it really didn't, I don't think, became too normie until really Skyrim.
I would agree with that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I knew
And
everybody
Fallout,
I knew played that game.
Fallout 3, I really think, started the normification, which was then continued by Skyrim, I think.
So that stuff we'll definitely get into deeper in the cast. I think we have to start with video games, obviously.
Yeah.
It is a video game franchise here. Why don't we just dive in, guys? Let's talk Bethesda.
Oh, well, I'm the type of guy who will never settle down. Where pretty girls are, well, you know that I'm around. I kiss them and I love them, cause of me they're all the same. I hug them and I squeeze them, and I don't even know their name. They call me the Wanderer. Yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around.
So let's go right into the meat of today's episode. Let's talk about Bethesda and the video games. Let's go around, everyone, just briefly talk about your history and experience with Bethesda games, especially the Fallout and Elder Scrolls series in particular.
Jacob, I texted you off pod that I thought I would be a good exposure for this because I'd played the best games, in my opinion. I have played Fallout New Vegas and I have played Skyrim, which are probably what I would consider the most popular games. I was very excited when you sent over this list of details with the other games as well, of the notes. I have played Dishonored, which was a video game I did not know.
Great game.
Dishonored, a video game that I got free through Xbox Live Games with Gold. I loved that video game.
Yeah, and the thing to just say real quick is that Bethesda, as a studio, they published a lot of games that they didn't actually design. So like the Dishonored series, the Doom series, Evil Within, Quake, lots of different games that they... But what I consider the Bethesda canon is the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, because they do develop them in-house and then...
I think that's an important distinction to make because, a lot of companies publish many things that they don't really make. Obviously, they have an influence, like a publisher of a book can say, oh, maybe you should make these changes so it'll sell better. Right. But overall, the development studio is behind the gameplay, and they are really the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games.
But I do have to say, I do love the Dishonored series as well. It's a great game.
Cool.
Dishonored 2, also a good game. You should check that one out if you haven't.
Evil Within as well is a fantastic horror game. If you're a fan of stuff like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, you'll like the Evil Within series.
And another thing they've done as a publisher is they're really good at letting go of the reins for the companies that they're publishing for. They allow them to kind of do their thing, and we saw that in Doom 2016, etc. So I think Bethesda, they've become a juggernaut starting from a small company, and I love their games.
Yeah, we even saw that aspect with Fallout New Vegas. Like, they were basically just let the company go and do whatever they wanted. They only set a handful of guidelines of stuff that they didn't want to cut off for future entries.
But let's get to the rest of our experience, guys. Joe, how many of these games have you played?
In terms of these games, I have not played too much. I have lost countless hours of friendships to Skyrim. I would like to hit this real quick. I moved to Los Angeles a year before the rest of my friends. In that time, I lived with my brother and my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law got very into Skyrim. I would say a good 5 hours for the few months after she bought it. 5 hours a weekend she would play, and it would kind of be like, oh,
God
it's
damn.
the time we have to hang out, and you were obsessed with this game. Colin, then you came out and we moved in together and things were great, and you got into Skyrim.
Until I got Skyrim.
And I lost you to Skyrim for hours and hours. And then I moved in with my girlfriend and we lived together, and she got into Elder Scrolls Online.
Oh, so
and
a
I
lot of
lost
tangential.
hours of our time to Skyrim and the fucking Elder Scrolls series.
Wow.
In general, it was just something that became such a cultural phenomenon that reached beyond regular video game casuals into, or normies, if you will, into hardcore gaming. I mean, I lost friends to crafting that I never thought would have had an interest in that at all because of the Skyrim series. And then in terms of like what I've played myself, Fallout 4, I finally got to get involved in a Bethesda universe myself. We'll talk about this more. I hate dragons, guys.
Oh no!
This is a little bit more, Fallout's a little bit more of something you can jump into.
Yeah, I hate generic fantasy. Like dragons, elves, warlocks, all that kind of shit is just not really my bag. Fallout was an opportunity for me to take advantage of these great systems that Bethesda put in place and great role-playing elements inside of a universe that, to me, was easier to feel connected to,
Right.
which was this
And it-
post-apocalyptic world.
And Fallout is very similar to Elder Scrolls. It's a lot just like in a different setting and with guns instead
shooter.
of swords and arrows. But for me, yeah, I grew up loving these kind of RPGs. I played Morrowind a little bit. Didn't get too into it because I was pretty young at that point. Got really into Oblivion. Played over 100 hours of Oblivion. Played over 100 hours of Fallout 3, New Vegas, Skyrim, Fallout 4. So I've played over 100 hours of most of the later titles post Morrowind, basically.
Can I say what consoles? Like Oblivion, is that Xbox?
And PC.
And PC, yeah. You can get all the games
Xbox
for PC.
360.
I'm a PC kind of guy a lot of the time.
And Jacob, you'll lead us through more of the history of Bethesda, but I think it's interesting to note that they started as a PC-specific company. They only did games for the PC.
Right. For a long time, like the early Elder Scrolls games were only on PC, but that's even before consoles could really even handle those kind of games, I think.
And even with like things like Morrowind, where they first started making their grabs on consoles, they were kind of confined, right, by the aspects of what they could put on a disc. You couldn't have as many voice actors or text files
Right,
on a
that's
single
right.
disc.
And that goes like Skyrim, like I said, is the normification of Elder Scrolls because they made it a lot more console friendly in the way that menus worked, in the way that you get perks and that kind of thing.
Full voice acting cast as well.
Oh yeah.
True.
And I definitely felt that. I mean, it wasn't a game that I played too much. I would try it out occasionally, Colin, on your system, on my sister-in-law's as well, and on Elder Scrolls Online as a Khajiit a little bit. But it's just not really my bag.
Right. And for me, I never played the oldest ones, Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall, as well as Redguard. But Mike, I know a guy who might have played those games, right?
Yeah, so I did play Arena, but I played it later. I got my introduction to the Bethesda Elder Scrolls series. I think we're a lot talking about Elder Scrolls. That's what most people are familiar with. I saw Morrowind on my friend's Xbox, and I thought it was insanely cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first PC I ever built for gaming was built to play Oblivion at max settings.
Oh, damn.
Wow.
And that was, in high school, I had my Taco Bell money saved up, and I built this rig just to run Oblivion max settings, and it was awesome.
Mike, can I ask you a bit about Arena? That sounds sort of like a Quake LAN-based game to me. No, is that not right?
No, so Arena, once I got in there and I downloaded it, they wanted to make like a game where the idea was you roamed around to different coliseums and fought, and then they were adding side quests, and they were like, we could just do that and cut the arena
Oh,
part out.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
That's
basically
where the
it
role
became
play
something
starts.
totally different from what they were
Yeah,
planning to
that's
make
where
it.
the genesis of
The title and cover of the Arena game are so misleading in terms of what you actually got. Because what you got was the basis of role-playing games in the modern era.
Oh, damn.
But what you were advertised was kind of this generic D&D insert hero here fighting game, which is
Right.
not at all what you were
But it is
given.
funny though, because in Oblivion they do throw in like kind of an Easter egg / joke, but it's a whole thing that you can do where they actually have an arena where you can fight
you're
people and things
kidding.
like that.
I
so.
think that's the biggest missed opportunity with Skyrim is that there was no PvP arena.
Oh,
Right, yeah, they
absolutely.
definitely
Yeah,
should have
that
included
element's
that as
totally
well.
taken out.
Mike, while you're saying that, it's interesting to note that that was built. All of that was built and designed by Bethesda Studios. Colin, you had recommended the 76 Fallout documentary we'll talk about more later. I watched one on just the history of Bethesda in general. For both Oblivion and Skyrim, they wanted to have an arena in every single town you visited.
They were
That
finally
sounds
going to
awesome.
do their first idea.
The problem was that it could just not fit on the disc. I mean, it was simply a matter of fitting that information onto a computer disc.
And another thing is, I mean, Bethesda, like we mentioned earlier, they do have flaws, and one of their biggest flaws
Lot of
is that
bugs.
they always, every release that they've had for at least as long as I can remember, has always, they've always had problems on release. They've had bugs, they've had content that they said was going to be in there that they then didn't include for either time or space reasons. I remember for Skyrim, they really wanted to release it on 11/11/11, so they rushed certain parts of the game and left certain parts of the game that they planned to put in out because they wanted to hit this date with cool numbers. So that's
a
Bethesda
bummer.
for you, yeah.
I mean, there are still bugs in that game to this day where you can play as a fork if you
Right.
Oh my
load
God.
the right save data at the right time. There is a bug that will literally put you in the perspective of a fork on a dinner table.
I'd love to be a fork. I played Oblivion, built the rig for it. Skyrim sucked all of my life away. That's the Bethesda
There we
right
go.
there.
Yeah. And Skyrim was the by far the best-selling game that they released. That's another thing that led to the
Because you released it 10 times, you're going to sell it.
Yeah.
Fuck.
So that's my issue. I've kind of stayed away from the re-release on the Nintendo Switch. It
Yeah.
really turns me off that might be the third time I've bought this video game.
Right.
The success of Skyrim was a total shock to the development team, though. They thought that they had a good game.
Sure.
They did not predict, and I don't think they could have predicted how well the game would be received by
Cultural
general
icon.
public.
normies. And so many people play Skyrim that don't even know what the Elder Scrolls are, and they're like, when's Skyrim 2 coming out? You know?
Yeah, true.
It has nothing to do with Elder
interesting.
Scrolls to these people. It's just the
Yeah,
idea
it's just
of
a
Skyrim.
very mainstream
It was-
RPG now.
Totally normified, if you will.
The escapism that they kind of stumbled into when they were making Arena by like just creating this world where you can wander around and do anything you want. They expanded on that so much through Morrowind and Oblivion that it's like anybody who just wants to escape, maybe you just want to pick flowers. You can do that for hundreds of hours. You
Right.
can just pick flowers if you want, or
And
you can go fight dragons. It's crazy.
And to think you're doing this at a time where open world games were not really a thing.
No.
I mean, this is
Grand
well
Theft Auto,
beyond.
maybe? That's it. Most Grand
Yeah,
Theft Auto.
sure.
Well, that's the thing
Not,
I
and
wanted
not
to-
even Grand Theft Auto 3. You're
Not
talking
that
just
big.
the tabletop game or
Right.
the 2D over the top view.
GTA 3 maybe came on. Not, I mean, Oblivion, no, but yeah, Arena, like creating an open world game, but nothing has
that's in
ever
the
been that big.
mid-90s.
Yeah, it's huge.
Well, I wanted to mention that Bethesda, for all their flaws, they're always trying to push the boundaries of what's capable with every new game. And even in Daggerfall, they expanded on what they did in Arena, and Daggerfall to this day has one of the biggest open worlds ever made. But so much of it was empty that they toned it down a little bit in the sequels. But they're always just pushing the boundaries.
Wow, larger than Skyrim?
Yeah, larger than
Ooh,
Skyrim is
that's
actually
crazy to
not
hear
one
as
of
a
the
fan.
bigger Elder Scrolls. It just has a lot more within it, but space-wise, Daggerfall is like one of the biggest ever.
So, Jacob, you're a huge fan of this company and the Elder Scrolls series. Why don't we just go ahead and walk through the history of Bethesda in relation to the Elder Scrolls games? Can you start us at the beginning there?
Yeah, sure. So Bethesda was founded in 1986. The first game that they made was actually Gridiron, which is a early football game, I believe, for the SNES. It was the first physics-based sports simulation game
Oh,
ever.
weird.
And EA liked it so much that they hired Bethesda to finish developing the first Madden game, and then it turned into a whole lawsuit thing where Bethesda sued EA to try to, because EA tried to screw Bethesda, but that's a long story.
It's weird to think that a game company that is known so much for their fantasy and sci-fi elements really got their start with football games.
Well, yeah, history and sports.
Yeah, and a lot of the early pre-Elder Scrolls games that they made were sports games. They made Wayne Gretzky hockey. They also made a Terminator game. They made some other movie tie-in games.
Yeah, it's weird that they had tie-ins with the Terminator franchise. You wouldn't have expected that.
And it seems like with even Arena, they were trying to make a fantasy sports game where you go and fight at these foreign arenas, right?
It almost seems like there was miscommunication in the company, though, because it's like Arena, what the premise delivers and what you get are totally different.
Even retailers complain about that, but
Oh, really?
yeah, because it was advertised as you're going to get A, and then they ended up.
Well, they really just should have changed the name because while they were making it, they just
should not have called it
to go in
Arena.
a different direction.
That's exactly right.
I mean, you could see the D&D influences all over the place there.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like, I might not be a fantasy fan, but I'm a huge D&D fan.
Right.
Playing through Dungeons and Dragons, Colin is our DM locally. That world, looking at Arena, it's just the same thing translated to a
Arena
PC.
starts in a dungeon, and then if you can get to the outside world, you get fucked up by a crab on the beach,
interesting.
which Dark Souls also did. They have very dangerous crabs, so I think maybe they're buying more from Elder Scrolls than they let on.
That's right. And so to get into a little more history about Bethesda, so they made the first Elder Scrolls Arena in 1994, followed by Daggerfall in 96, and then Morrowind in 2002. And Morrowind was where it wasn't necessarily a normification, but it did update the graphics a lot, updated the engine.
First one on a console, right?
That's right as well. And most people consider it the best game in the series story-wise and just range of what you're able to do.
Before Morrowind, there were the Elder Scrolls Adventures, right? These were kind of offshoot games. One of them I really appreciate. I haven't played it, but I read about it a lot. It was Redguard, and it was an Elder Scrolls game that was basically like a pirates game.
Oh, that's interesting. Redguard, a type of race that you can choose inside the Elder Scrolls games.
That's right.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. I just knew that this game was like Pirates of the Caribbean, basically. And Todd Howard had actually said that was kind of, to him, the first basis of Elder Scrolls moving beyond just a generic fantasy insert hero here
Coming
to
into
more
its
of
own.
developing their own world, which gave an opportunity for stuff like Morrowind, which was way more grandiose.
Yeah, and each installment kind of has its own flavor. Like Skyrim is set in Skyrim, which is the Northland, so it's
They all
very
take part in
Nordic
separate
inspired.
regions, right?
Yeah, those are the
Morrowind, has a lot
Nordics,
more
right?
Eastern
Probably
influences
the
and-
coolest parts of these games.
Yeah.
The geographical aspects.
And like most of them are named after
differentiating.
either areas in Tamriel, which is the continent that Elder Scrolls takes place on, or a species like Redguard. So
Oh, is Oblivion a place inside Elder
Oblivion
Scrolls?
is not, but that has to do with the Oblivion Crisis, which is like the
It
main
happens in the
storyline.
Imperial Empire.
But Morrowind is an area as well as Daggerfall. So
And the developers have said every single time that they create a Bethesda game, they start with the map. So, I mean, it makes sense to me that this is all based on locations, because the first thing they build out before characters, before environments, is just the map itself.
which leads everyone to speculate based on that 30 seconds of Elder Scrolls 6 teaser. Where's the next one going
Yeah,
to be
where
set?
is that's
Can
going
we
to be
get a
such a
prediction?
huge part.
Jacob,
a lot of
do you
people
have
think
one?
it's High Rock, which
High
is
Rock, tell us that.
Sick, dude.
Yeah, I believe High Rock is where the Redguard come from. I believe.
Oh, really?
Wow, I wanted a Khajiit world, but it might be High Rock.
No.
Well, they've done so many different provinces already that what I think would be cool, and if the tech is there, just do the entire continent of Tamriel.
Jesus
and
Christ.
you could just
Combine it
walk
all together.
coast to coast in
The big
Tamriel.
world.
I would love that. Yeah.
Uninstall everything on your PS4, please.
If it was called Elder Scrolls 6 Tamriel, how much would you lose your minds? That would get
I
me
would
so excited.
take probably a couple days off work just when it comes.
I would quit my job. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, though, if it is based, I mean, I know we're grandiose here, if it is the whole continent, bringing it back a little bit to reality. If it is where the Redguard are from, it might be the first Elder Scrolls game that I pick up myself.
Well, you can
and
play
actually
as a
play through.
Redguard in any. You can play as any species in any of the games.
Yeah, but can you get on a pirate ship and run your own,
If that's
your own
what they
smuggling
do.
operation? Because that's kind of what's really exciting.
I don't know
to
a lot
me.
about the Redguard. That's
But
true.
yeah, and so but they have said for Elder Scrolls 6 they're waiting. So basically it's been 7 years since Skyrim came out. They've been waiting to make this game. They've been waiting for the tech to catch up to what they want to do. So
It's been 7 years since the first time they released Skyrim.
yes, but it's been 7 years since we've seen a new Elder Scrolls game, not including
Right.
Elder Scrolls Online. But they've said before they're waiting for the tech to catch up. That could mean that they're trying to do something like that or something.
Are they going to wait for the next console cycle, you think?
I believe so because I think it'll be for. Well, they said Starfield will probably be on next gen consoles as well, and they're making a whole new engine, so that's good because
That
the
takes
Fallout
time.
4 engine is looking a wee bit dated.
Jacob, can
Oh,
I
you
ask?
think so? Even moving into
Absolutely.
76?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, 76. I'm excited to play it, but that engine is so dated. I mean, even Fallout 4 has bugs upon bugs. You know, it's just
Every Bethesda game has bugs, though.
Yeah,
When you're
but
doing
I'm
something
hoping
that big, you can't comb it. For
And if I had to guess, I mean, they released Skyrim on 11/11/11. I think they might be waiting for 2/22/22.
Oh God.
Oh.
So just a stab in the dark there, but it could be
like
that
the
long.
black
No,
hand.
that's not a bad idea, though, if they are as obsessed with numbers as they seem to be.
No, you mean
That could be something
22,
we're seeing.
22, 22. That famous month, 22.
Yeah, month 22. I mean, Bethesda, they're not only known for Skyrim, though. They've also acquired and been making Fallout games
That's
for
right,
the last
so-
couple of years with the same engine.
How did they get the rights to Fallout to begin with, Jacob?
Okay, so basically, they bought the rights from
Sort of.
They bought the rights.
Well, they acquired the rights from Black Isle Studios, who made Fallout 1 and 2. If you haven't played Fallout 1 and 2, they are a top-down isometric RPG.
What
in the
console we
style of-
talking?
We're talking PC.
Yeah,
Oh,
no
damn.
console.
So these are very old school.
Very
Oh
old
yeah, this
school.
is
Oh,
in
yeah.
the 90s. This was created by Black Isle Studios, which, if you're a fan of RPGs, you know Baldur's Gate, you know
Oh, yeah.
Icewind Dale.
Oh, wow. So a lot of old RPGs then.
Yeah,
Baldur's Gate's a
and
D&D
so-
thing.
Hell
So
yeah.
Fallout 1 was originally the sequel to a game called Wasteland, but it was basically they didn't have the rights to use Wasteland, so they just made it. They called it Fallout. So they had Fallout 1 and 2. Then Bethesda acquires Fallout, and they turn it into a 3D RPG that we know as Fallout 3.
They just plugged it into the Oblivion engine, right?
That's right. Fallout 3 is very similar to Oblivion, whereas Fallout 4 is very similar to Skyrim. So
Makes sense, stretch your
Yeah.
resources. But it's with guns, right? It's post-apocalyptic. There's a lot of mutated beasts, and you're trying to survive out there in the wilderness. You can explore anywhere you want, but it's just more wrapped in that apocalyptic setting.
that's right.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the gunplay, though? Because that was a big pill
That's-
for me to swallow.
Well, the gunplay has never really been what Fallout is known for
It's rough.
until Fallout 4. I would say Fallout 4 is even more of a shooter RPG, whereas New Vegas and 3 are more RPGs with shooter elements or action elements. Fallout 4 is a full-on FPS/RPG, if you know what I mean.
And that blending of genres is something that I think was a huge success and helped the normification of the Fallout series. Because I had heard about New Vegas and played a little bit of that, was really turned off by the gunplay. The VAT system
and
just didn't click with
Fallout
me.
3 is
I
even
didn't get it
worse. But Fallout 4 did do a lot to improve the shooting. While there is still VATS, you don't need you're not reliant on it. I never liked VATS either because I think it makes the gameplay a little too easy, a little too boring. But Fallout 4 did add a lot of FPS elements that made the gunplay much more manageable.
It seems like the big thing we're talking about here, though, is the worlds that Bethesda can create. These immersive worlds, these huge maps, these like deep. There's lore to them, you know.
and
There's
that's what they're
different factions.
known for. Yeah, they're not known for great combat. They're
Right.
not known for great
Whereas-
graphics or anything like that.
Dark Souls is fantasy with good combat and a fucking weird ass story. This is fantasy or Wasteland with
Yeah.
a huge map and deep lore, but the combat could use some work.
No, for Fallout, I'm all about the aesthetic, guys. I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah,
I
100%.
love the Pip-Boy. I love
Oh, yeah.
the power suit. I mean, honest to God, everything about it. That Cold War era futurism where we had the idyllic, what's it going to look like afterwards? I'm not talking Mad Max where things are blown to hell, total apocalypse style.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, that positive view of what we thought things would turn out to be in the 50s. I fucking love that aesthetic.
Tunnel snakes rule. I mean, buying into that aesthetic of like 1950s America in a post-apocalyptic world. I don't think there's anything more original than that in the video game world.
I think
today.
that like BioShock takes a lot from that as well.
For sure.
Yeah, and I am a fan of the aesthetics as well. I do have to say, I think Colin and Joey, you guys mentioned Fallout 4 is, you think, one of the best. I have a lot of problems with Fallout 4. I'm much more apprehensive about Fallout 4. While there are things that I like about it, maybe we could go into a little more what we liked and didn't like about it. I think it dumbed down a lot of aspects of Fallout, the RPG aspects, the perks, that kind of thing. And what I always like Bethesda for is there's such a wide range of play styles. I mean, you make your own character, you pick your specializations and that sort of thing, and it's up to you how you want to play. I think Fallout 4 really normified it and really made it console friendly, if you will, and just kind of dumbed down those RPG aspects.
But I guess I hope, and I guess the whole point of this podcast, guys, and for our listeners out there, does it hold up to the normiization? I mean, when something like that, because if it gets to that point, that's when we're going to start talking about it. So something like Fallout 4 has become so accessible. Has it become dumb to you? Has it lost its magic? That's the big question.
Mm-hmm. The company as itself even decided to make a pivot in Morrowind to make themselves console friendly. They were basically at a crossroads where you could either continue to be a PC developer or you could become a full game studio. They made the decision to get into the console world, and I think once you're in that world, normification is the goal.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Morrowind supposed to be online?
I'm not
I
sure
think
about that.
in the original development cycle, I could be wrong, and let me know if I am, listeners, but I've heard things where Morrowind was supposed to be an online game, and the world is pretty unpopulated. People like the story, but it feels pretty empty.
And that's kind of what we're getting back to with Elder Scrolls Online in 2015 and Fallout 76 in 2018.
Yeah, so Morrowind felt almost unfinished to console players because there's just a bunch of empty space.
Yeah,
people
and
say it's the best one, but what's going on there?
I think a lot of that is due to the limitations of the tech at the time, because they do improve on that in Oblivion and then even more in Skyrim, right?
Yeah, I mean, those ones are great, but
Each successive world feels a little more lived in and a little more active.
my favorite's Oblivion, but maybe just because I played it the most and it had an arena.
Well, how do you feel about jumping to something like Elder Scrolls Online then?
Well, I've never played Elder Scrolls Online. I mean, it's an MMO, so it's interesting, but it's not something that I'd be super into. For me, the joy of a Bethesda game is just a good old-fashioned single-player RPG. That's why I'm also a little apprehensive about Fallout 76, because we don't need multiplayer in every game, and I just think that there's room for those single-player RPGs that I grew up loving, you know?
So, Jacob, you think that Bethesda as a company works best when they're building single-player games as opposed to multiplayer experiences?
I do. I mean, I'll still play Fallout 76. I'll still buy it and I'll still play it. But to me, it does look basically like an expansion of Fallout 4 with online play and just more base building, which wasn't my favorite thing about Fallout 4, but we'll get into that as well.
There's a lot of people that like that aspect of modern gaming. Like, Fortnite has a crafting system.
Yeah.
Crafting is
I'm
like
a big
huge
crafting
now.
fan. Yeah, of course.
You are a big crafting fan. You like Minecraft.
You're a Minecraft guy, right?
Not to out you, but
Oh, we are outing you.
Well,
hardcore.
there's a lot
Feed
of
the beast.
caveats. It's not,
modded Minecraft.
And for the people that know, they'll know.
Feed the beast.
Shout them out, dog.
But no, yeah, so there's like a crafting system with this.
Yeah.
76, there's a multiplayer. Like,
Right, and so a lot of people are saying it's Rust meets Fallout, or
Even-
Ark Survival meets Fallout.
Yeah, even Final Fantasy is done online. If an RPG gets big enough, they'll think about expanding its world into being an MMO, right?
I loved Final Fantasy Online.
I'm not an MMO guy, though. It's
And
not anything like that.
When a game series or a game company gets that big, it's about building that community, and fostering that community online makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fallout 4, I do want to get a little more into the base building aspect of it, because I did like it. Wasn't the best part of the game, but actually that started with Skyrim, the Skyrim DLC.
You could get a house.
Hearthstone.
It was a Hearthstone?
I thought it was
Whatever.
Hearthstone's a game. It's a card game.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Hearthfire.
think it was
I believe
Hearthfire.
But yeah, you're right. You could get,
where you could make your own house and you could customize it, but even that had very limited ways you could do it. They expanded on that in Fallout 4 with the settlement building, which was fun. My problem with the settlement building was there were so many settlements. Like, I built up the sanctuary. I made it look really nice. I customized it out. But then I realized, there's like 50 other settlements. I'm not going to go to every settlement and like set up defenses, set up water purification. Like, it just gets repetitive.
it's kind of like Metal Gear 5. It just gets too fucking granular.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
run out of time to
exactly.
give a shit.
But beyond that, I mean, isn't the reason that we only got Skyrim once and then they remade it like 7 times over the course of 7 years is because that world is so big that they want you to spend the time in there building things up like that? I mean, to you, is that not worth
in
it?
Skyrim.
Well,
It just in Bethesda games in general, in Fallout
It's
and
a
in
giant
There's a lot to see
world.
and explore.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
you can read books.
Yeah, but here's my whole thing. If I can just jump in real quick, I know a lot of people who get turned off by open world games. Do you guys ever feel like you need a set of guidelines?
No,
or
I love
you're-
open
no,
world.
You're
I
someone
just
who
like
just wants to
walking in a
dive
direction, not even looking at the quest, just talking to people, maybe getting a quest, just walking and seeing what comes your way.
It depends on the setting for me. In a game like Elder Scrolls, just because my personal preference is that dragons are dumb and I'm not interested
dumb.
in that world.
Joe
no.
is not Dragonborn, by the way.
No. Fallout, kind of. Ooh, you got me there. I'm a little interested. The new game they're developing, the new IP, that could be the first one for me that really feels.
You're talking about Starfield.
I'm talking about Starfield, man. That
should
could
be good. Should be good.
That to me could be the first Bethesda game that I lose myself in.
But Joe, like if you had a Spider-Man game that followed linearly one of your favorite comic book storylines, would you prefer that to the open world Spider-Man you're about to get?
I mean, why not both, Doc?
Why not
Yeah,
both?
it depends how good the games are.
That brings me to another point I wanted to make, which is that Skyrim did start a lot of trends or continue a lot of trends in gaming in the last decade or so. I mean, it came out almost 10 years ago. I mean, 2011.
Yeah, close too.
Yep.
I think a game that
It's ancient.
that improved upon a lot of the things that Skyrim was trying to do is The Witcher 3, which I've been playing a lot of recently. I know it's kind of, been out a couple years.
Shout out to Poland.
But The Witcher 3 is a game that does that open world great. The one difference that I wanted to make that Skyrim, that the uniqueness that Skyrim adds is that you do create your own character, your own backstory if you want, your own play style. Whereas The Witcher 3, you are very much role playing as Geralt of Rivia. You are a Witcher and you have your own. Like you use your two swords, and that's the way it is. So
It's
if you
true.
like role playing as an established character, The Witcher 3 is the gold standard of that. Whereas if you want to design your own character, something like Skyrim or Fallout, it's much better for that.
I mean, like you said, Bethesda has laid a lot of groundwork, hopefully with Cyberpunk 2077, which is something I'm super optimistic about, from the team that made Witcher 3.
CD Projekt Red.
CD Projekt Red, very
We'll
good company.
see that opportunity to build your own character in a different world as opposed to the Witcher world or the
I don't know,
Elder
Joe.
Scrolls world.
I don't know. I
it's
think
gonna
that's going to be
much
another
more story-based.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of their thing is that they don't do the Bethesda style make your own character, which is fine. I mean both have their merits,
The Witcher is like an economized version of Skyrim. If you don't want the mess of who do I have to be, where do I have to go,
Right.
It gives you a little bit of
are
that.
Geralt of Rivia, and
Gives you
are
direction.
a Witcher, and that's what you do. You go around. You're a monster hunter detective, and that's the way I play when I play.
It's like your Supernatural brothers.
Which I'm super into as a fan of the Supernatural Brothers and just that type of game.
Why is the series not called the Supernatural brothers?
Supernatural
It
Brothers.
should, Doc.
Joe, I would watch
I
that
would watch
any
it
minute
every
with
day.
you.
I mean, I watch it every day to begin with. But just, the idea, like, they're the fucking Hardy Boys.
And actually,
Yeah.
Joe, if I could say, I think you would love Witcher because it's very
it's got
very
boobs.
Arkham, where you're
I love
investigating
boobs.
these monsters. You're,
Mythos-driven.
yeah, you're like a detective in this ancient medieval world where you have to figure out the monster's weaknesses. You have to get the right blade oils.
You
for
are
your
Dean
blade.
Winchester because you
That is your job. You are a monster. You take
You're
contracts.
doing a
to hunt
good sell
monsters.
right now to Joe. He's going to
it's a
It's
little
really
too
fun.
much.
And
On the
actually, another thing I can mention is that the combat is really fun in Witcher because it's a lot like it's a lot like the Arkham Batman games meets Dark Souls. The combat, it has got some Dark Souls elements. It's got some Arkham elements in that combat. You lock onto your character.
Okay, so it's kind of a mix of like action adventure, third person with RPG elements. I could get behind that.
Because as we talked, Bethesda does not do combat super well, right?
Oh, no,
No.
even in Skyrim.
Skyrim, yeah. I mean, the range of different styles you can do in Skyrim is good, but the actual combat itself is very basic.
Pitiful.
The breadth is great, but the depth is lackluster.
Well,
Very
that's one of
good,
those
Mike.
things, like, for me, like, Colin, my sister-in-law, my girlfriend, everybody was so into Skyrim. Every single one of them at some point was like, oh, pick up the controller. You'll get obsessed as well. No, man, that combat sucked. I could just not get into it because I didn't have the fluidity that I
Well,
would look for in attacks.
I think
And
that's why
another thing-
PvP would suck. How it would not be
Oh,
fun
very
to
true.
fight somebody in the Skyrim engine,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And that's another thing, where the play style counts a lot because if you do a magic build, magic is a little more there's a little more depth to it than just hand-to-hand combat. And also the fact that you can dual wield, you can have magic, you can be shooting fireballs out of your left hand with a hand axe in your right hand.
Right.
The amount of different play styles that you can attack it from. Same with Fallout.
Do you want to be stealth? Do you want to run head in? Like, there's a lot of choices you can make there.
And with Fallout, you could be a melee guy, you could be a sniper, you could be whatever you want.
Nothing beats a baseball bat in any game. Fallout does that great.
Final Fantasy VII has the nail bat. It's a bat with a single nail driven through it. So they also have a bat.
Yeah. See, Fallout, I go pure rifles, and I like to be a marksman. But
I like to rifle through people's old shit.
So can I ask you, when I mentioned, Jacob, that the ones that I played, you said Skyrim kind of the most unfavorable amongst fans. And then I'm seeing here in your research, New Vegas not even released by Bethesda.
Yeah, New Vegas, considered by many to be the best Fallout game. It's a game that Oblivion took over and said, okay, we'll take the model developed by Fallout 3 and we'll improve upon that. I think it has the best story of the modern Fallout games. I think the story in Fallout 4 is pitiful, as well as Fallout 3 not being that good. But Oblivion, or
New Vegas.
Great. I think I
love
said
the
Oblivion
story.
instead of
Matthew
Obsidian.
Perry in it.
Yeah,
Matthew Perry?
as
Matthew Perry voices the
messenger.
bad guy.
Could I be any
One of
more
the bad
evil?
guys.
It's like, I wasn't interested at all until you said that. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I have
but
to
it
hear
plays out
Matthew
like a
Perry.
super cool Western. I mean, it puts you
and that's
just
the other
into a
thing
desolated landscape.
that I love about New Vegas. It's
almost
the
like-
setting. Even though it's the graphics are a little dated today, the setting is my favorite setting of all the Fallout games. You're just out in the desert. You've got the New California Republic. You've got the Caesar's Legion, which is one of my favorite factions. You got the Brotherhood of Steel, of course. Just a great game overall.
I remember that being one of the first games, too, where, I mean, there were commercials on TV for New Vegas. And I remember
Frank
thinking, like,
Sinatra.
yeah, and I remember thinking, like, oh, this is kind of just like another shooter game. And then I got my hands on it, and it was like, whoa, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Part of Bethesda's world building is they do really good factions. They really do these intriguing groups that are all vying for power in their own way. Like, you got the champions who are secretly werewolves in Skyrim. You have the Black Hand, which is a murderous thieves group, the Thieves Guild. They do this really well. And same thing, like I said, with the Caesars and the New California Republic. It's great stuff. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think that Oblivion and Morrowind did a little better than Skyrim. The Skyrim Civil War, I had some problems with it because the
So
one side
lame, so
that I
boring.
wanted to pick the one side that's not the, so there's like the capitalists or whatever, the
Imperials?
the Imperials,
Yeah, which
And
that's
then
where
there's
Oblivion is set, is in the Imperial domain.
right, and then there's the Nords. I forget what their kind of faction.
Stormcloaks.
The Stormcloaks. That's right. And I
Stormcloaks.
really wanted to join the Stormcloaks, and then I talked to the king of the Stormcloaks, and I realized, oh, they're just a bunch of racists. I don't.
Yeah,
want to be the
dude.
racist.
I got swerved. I was so mad. I was a Khajiit
Yeah.
too. I'm like, you hate
Yeah,
everybody
and they
but you.
hate Khajiits.
Right. So you
Yeah.
can either be an Imperial or you can be a racist.
You can
And I
sell
was
out or
like-
be a racist. Fuck both of these choices.
And Colin, I remember you specifically trying to make the decision of, do I become a werewolf or do I not become a werewolf?
Yeah, that's all I cared about. I'll be honest with you. I
being a
stopped with
werewolf
the
is
Civil
great.
War storyline.
I'm gonna
and
go
jumped
pick
right into
flowers.
Dawn Guard. Yeah.
I married
Or you
the
can
werewolf
become a
lady.
vampire. That's fun too.
Except you can't go out in the daytime.
I mean, it went beyond just like hardcore gaming or D&D nerds. Like, anyone would be interested in making those decisions that, frankly, like 5 years before, no one would care about.
Just give me a third choice that's like, fuck both of these.
Yeah.
Because neither of them are good. Neither of them is right. Maybe that's what they're going for. Like,
Yeah,
oh, there's no
story-wise.
right choice.
Right. But the great thing about the way Bethesda makes their stories is you could totally skip that storyline and not even do it.
Yeah, you could still
if-
put 200 hours into the game, skipping
Yeah.
all of that.
Which I have.
You could
Yes.
not even, you could, if you want to, not even complete the main quest and just, role play as a guy that walks around and like picks flowers and makes herbs or
or just
makes
puts
his own
buckets
weapons
on
and
people's
stuff.
heads.
Yeah.
You know?
Wheels of cheese.
I collected a lot of wheels of cheese and put them in my house and it was great.
Have you finished the main quest of Skyrim?
No.
Yes.
I actually have, but only after playing over 100 hours of Skyrim.
And did you just feel like you had to kind of zip it up?
And it actually felt kind of anticlimactic, if I'm going to be honest.
Oh.
Like the fight where you fight the
Droughter or whatever his name, the Dread Dragon, the Black Dragon. Alder.
yeah.
Alder.
And the wrap up all felt a little anticlimactic, and the main storyline, it didn't do it for me in that way that the storyline of Oblivion really did it for me.
But do you think that's because you had already invested 100 hours into that universe?
Oh yeah, I don't
or-
regret playing the game. I mean, it's still just a great game to walk around in. And another way you can play it, it adds fast travel, which is another interesting thing. Like Morrowind, there's no fast travel in Morrowind. If you want to go somewhere,
my gosh.
and there's also
That's why it felt so empty when I saw it.
yeah, and the way that they do map markers and that kind of thing in Skyrim, it's this new trend in games where they really have to spell it out for you. Go here, follow these dotted lines to get to the next quest
it
objective.
overtakes your compass.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In Morrowind, it was like turn left at the funny looking rock, and if you
They're
want to get to
all-
a city, you have to actually walk or
that's
ride a
great.
horse, to the city.
You have to like self-navigate though, and like they thing with older games too is they trusted players to figure stuff out a lot more, and
Sure.
now you don't see that much. Like
Yeah, now they just spell
I
it
love
out for
Dark
you.
Souls. They don't hold your hand.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the normification of it. I mean, PC games
Make it
back in the
easier.
day were not for
Look at
children.
Monkey Island, all these click and point adventure
Right.
games. They're fucking hard.
But you guys got to understand, for video games, for a lot of people, are to turn your brain off. I mean, what's the argument there?
Right.
yeah,
But I mean, just Skyrim it's just a lot of like, go here, talk to this guy. Now go here and talk to
There's
this
a lot
guy.
of fetch
It spells
quests.
it out for you.
Well, and Colin, like you said, what's the argument there? People say the same thing about movies. People say the same thing about music.
Very
I mean,
true.
what is the argument of like, is entertainment meant to just turn your brain off? I don't want to grind in something that doesn't matter. One
I
thing
don't
that
want
I
to
thought
just
was
turn my brain off though. Like if I'm going to do something, like I'm going to think about it.
Oh,
like,
neither do I,
critically,
dog. I agree with you. But some people do feel that way. One thing I think was interesting in the Fallout series is that they really had to think about this being a survival game, yes. One quote I loved was a developer talking about, like, in the morning I have to brush my teeth. I have to do that so my teeth don't rot. I don't want to do that in a video game. That's boring. So what elements of survival are worth adding into
right.
a
Thin
video
line.
game?
You're absolutely right.
right.
And then also to add to that, I mean, there are different levels of how realistic you want to play it. If you want to play a full-on survival mode, you can. You can play no fast travel. You need to eat and drink a lot. You need to sleep to regain, health and that sort of thing. You need to take in radiation into account. That's all possible both in Skyrim and Fallout 4. The level of hardcoreness that you want to be.
I
it's
didn't know
up to you.
Skyrim had that. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
Skyrim has that as well as mods that add a lot of. There's a mod that's like a hunger overhaul that'll really make the hunger system a lot.
You become
more
a hungry
hardcore.
boy, yeah.
One thing I thought was interesting that you just brought up was the radiation levels. One thing Fallout 76 is introducing that I'm super excited about is the idea of mutations. And like if you don't stay out of radiated areas, if you don't eat, if you don't replenish your health, you're going to get more radiated. You're going to mutate, and those mutates are going to those mutations are going to affect the gameplay. That is 3 levels deeper than I think most people think when they turn on a video game.
That's true. They're always doing these cascading effects, whether through a decision you make early in the game and how that's going to affect different factions and the storyline, or even, like you said, the radiation stacking on top of itself to change the world itself. Bethesda is good at worlds. It seems like they're hit or miss on stories, and they're also hit or miss on combat.
They can be, and I think with stories they used to be a lot better. I think they've gone downhill recently.
If they start with building the map, it makes sense that their world is so immersive, but they're so focused on the map, maybe they lose some of the smaller details.
Absolutely.
And they've already announced that the Fallout 76 story is cyclical, meaning you're going to launch these nukes, you're going to collect the codes again, you're going to launch them again. I mean, it's a big circle.
Dark Souls.
Is that exciting for players?
I think I'm less hyped about Fallout 76 than most Fallout fans seem to be. I'm really not too excited. Like, I'll still play it, but to me, it doesn't look different enough from Fallout 4. It seems like I'm doing a lot of the same things, just in a multiplayer setting.
Which one of the announcements that they made at E3 is most exciting for you moving forward? Are you a
definitely-
Fallout guy, an Elder Scrolls guy?
I'm
or-
both, but I think Starfield is going to be really exciting. And I think Elder Scrolls 6 down the line. I've been waiting for a new Elder Scrolls game for years. So.
Well, we got confirmation about Starfield not having multiplayer. It's
Yes.
back to them just being a single player
Absolutely, and that's what their
storyline-driven
main
game.
RPGs should be. Like Elder Scrolls Online, that's fine if you want to do a one-off MMO. If you want to do a one-off Fallout 76, that's not what their main games are going to be going forward. Elder Scrolls 6, I doubt that'll have any kind of multiplayer aspect
Oh,
at all.
definitely not.
I just hope they open the arena area. Should be the only multiplayer area.
Yeah, so you're looking for a
You
PvP experience.
Just a little bit. Go to the arena in the main city. You sign up for a tournament, and that's that.
But again, if they hopefully they improve the combat a little bit, because just a PvP of Skyrim combat would not really be that fun.
Well, while we're talking about hopes and dreams for these games in the future, I just got to say, I know you've been ragging on it all episode, but as a Nintendo Switch fan, I just desperately want Fallout 4 to come to the Switch.
Really?
Absolutely. I want to get that adaptation to the Switch. I want to jump back into the Fallout world. I understand that fans aren't loving it, but if I can take that anywhere, I am fucking down to play that game.
I mean, I had mentioned at the beginning I'm interested in getting a Switch because of some of the E3 announcements. Fallout 4 on the Switch would be so exciting, just because that's the type of game
Thank
where
you.
I'm on the couch, we're watching a movie or we're marathoning a TV show I've seen a million times. Let me play that game.
Yeah, and I don't hate Fallout 4. I mean, I did play over 100 hours of it, and I enjoyed a lot of it. It does have significant problems, I think. And one of the biggest problems I have with it is that the engine, they're still using that Skyrim engine 4 years later.
Oh, boy.
And not to bring up Witcher 3 again, but Witcher 3 came out the same year as Fallout
it's
4.
gorgeous.
And the stark contrast of Witcher 3's graphics and world compared to Fallout is just too much for me to ignore, you know?
I mean, do you think that's a Bethesda problem? Do you think as a company they're a little lazy?
Bethesda,
Or?
I think recently they've been kind of riding their coattails of like, their earlier games. And I think they're getting back into like Elder Scrolls 6. They specifically have said multiple times, we're waiting for the tech to match our vision. And I'm really happy about that, because if they just released Elder Scrolls 6 on the same old engine, it would be shit, basically.
yeah, just Skyrim 1.5.
Yeah.
Everything they make is kind of spearheaded, it seems, by this Todd Howard guy. That's his name.
Todd Howard, very...
Two first names.
I don't know
very
anything
controversial
about
figure.
him.
Todd Howard, he joined Bethesda in 1994. He actually got turned down twice before he would drive by their studio every day to go to school, and he really wanted to work there. He got turned down while he was in school. They said finish school. Then he got turned down again after school. Finally, he got hired as a developer on the early Elder Scrolls games. He became project leader on Morrowind, and since then he's been the exec producer or game director of every game that they've put out. So he's now kind of the figurehead of Bethesda. Very controversial guy, very egotistical, some people think.
I mean, I've seen some interviews. He kind of comes off like a douchebag. but
Yeah,
Why is he controversial?
A lot of people attribute the sort of normification, the Skyrim and the Fallout 4, to him wanting to dumb it down for the most mainstream appeal that it
Oh
can
my
be.
god, I just see that as a guy who wants people to play his video games.
Of course, I mean, it's
that
an
seems like
argument.
a good thing.
I
to
want to
me.
make a game for 10 people.
No, it's the argument of mainstream appeal versus like the hardcore gamers.
Art.
But the hardcore gamers feel betrayed by him because they.
Same thing with music fans. Oh, you fucking sold out.
But
like
I think,
you feel betrayed.
but there is a way to make games that have mainstream appeal that are a little more complex, a little more deep. And if you want them to be deep, they can be. If you want them to be shallow, they can be. I think Fallout 4, for one thing, is very shallow gameplay style where you can't get deeper than a certain point. Whereas like Skyrim, there is little more deepness to it, but especially like Morrowind and Oblivion, Fallout New Vegas, a lot more to it. Skyrim, like I think Mike said before, Skyrim and Fallout 4, it has breadth but not depth.
Sure,
Yeah.
and something like God of War that just came out, the revamp of that, we've seen a lot of praise. That's something that it seems like it has mass appeal, but also people are very happy with how it was produced.
But even something like Dark Souls, if you can play it as a normie or you can play it as a hardcore fan.
I don't think there's a lot of normies playing Dark Souls. I mean, they do, but I don't think they finish it.
I mean, I think it's all about finding that balance between a hardcore gamer's acceptance and a general audience. Like, the whole sold out argument, I think, is a little benign. Like, you can never sell out if you never buy in.
I don't
Just
think
because
they
you want people to
sold
buy your
out
game
necessarily.
doesn't
I
mean bad.
do think they dumbed it down a lot. the contrast between Fallout 3 and New Vegas into Fallout 4 in terms of the leveling, the perks, it's just so much more simplified. And I don't want to say that's a bad thing, but I mean there is a way to have games that have more depth to them that are also have mainstream appeal, I think.
They just need like a bitch switch.
Yeah.
You know, do you want to play it for real or do you want to play it for fun?
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
That's it, you know.
I'd be down for that, man. I'd hit it every time.
Because there's plenty of times too, like where I'm, playing a game that it's just like you see games where they let you skip boss fights. Have you seen this before?
Oh, no, that's a real
really
thing?
Breaks
Like
my
there's
heart.
shit where it's like you die enough times, you can skip. It's usually not AAA games. It's but it's like, okay, hold on. So that's going a little bit too
Yeah.
far,
Right.
But
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
they
that's
have an
kind of
option where you
eliminating
can play the
challenge.
surface level of just run through your giant world adventure or go deeper.
And another thing that Fallout 4 simplified a lot is the dialogue trees. So they give you the illusion of choice in these dialogue trees. But if you actually look into it more, a lot of the dialogue, it leads to the same result. So it's like the illusion of choice. You're not actually making decisions. You're just saying, what inflection do you want my character to say the same thing with? You know
That's
what I mean?
a big sin in my mind.
Yeah.
It is, but at the same time, that's a lot of a limitation of what you can physically fit on a disc and what you can physically fit on a console.
Well, I think you shouldn't be biting off more than you can chew then.
Yeah, the dialogue trees were much better in Sky. If you compare the dialogue in Skyrim to the dialogue in Fallout 4, it's the contrast is very apparent of how much it's simplified. Where now there's just like a lot of times there's just one answer that's a sarcastic answer, where there's one answer that's like a serious answer, but they lead to the same result. Whereas Skyrim, your choices actually mattered. In another game that I keep bringing up, Witcher 3, your choices actually have impact on the story in the game.
And you won't know until hours later.
Yeah.
I love how this is a Bethesda podcast, and you have sold me on Witcher 3 more than anything else.
I just think Witcher 3
If you
expands
like-
on a lot of what Skyrim did and improves upon it a lot.
If you like Skyrim, you'll like The Witcher.
Yeah, so you don't think there's anything that... let me rephrase. You think Bethesda had to do what they did in order for Witcher 3 to come about?
Not necessarily, because I mean there was Witcher 1 and Witcher 2, but Skyrim took a lot of trends, popularized and mainstreamized a lot of trends in RPG gaming that Witcher 3 expanded on and continued. But I think the thing that Skyrim does have over Witcher 3 is that you're able to play your own character and you can design them however you want. Again, where in Witcher 3 you're Geralt of Rivia.
Every time I start a new Elder Scrolls game, it's like, yeah, what am I going to be? Who am I?
Right.
What's my backstory? Oh, I'm a Khajiit and I came up on the streets and I just want to pickpocket people, like that's fine. Steal some bread. I'm
Yeah.
like Aladdin.
But
Or
will you spend an hour on that, Mike? I know I will.
I'll spend 6 hours crafting iron daggers until my crafting is up to 100% to make the best armor in the game. I'll do that.
And if I can bring it back to Fallout 4 again, that's another thing. While Fallout 4, you can make your own character. The story locks you into a certain... You are this guy looking for his son, Sean.
Another dad game.
Sean.
Sean, that's
Fuck
not very
you,
futuristic.
Sean.
Whereas in Skyrim, the whole story is that you are a dragonborn, but that's basically it. You can be whatever kind of dragonborn
Drop
you
you down in the world that way.
Yeah, you're not
You're
set
the
into
chosen
you're not
one.
looking for your long lost son.
But you can do whatever you want as a chosen one. If you want to be in the Thieves Guild, do it. If you want to join the dudes on the mountain, do it. If not, whatever.
The dudes on the mountain.
The Mystics? I don't know.
Oh, you can't say Mystics.
Oh, shit. I'm not a wizard. That's right. My grandpa was part wizard, so...
There you go.
But yeah, Skyrim, that's a difference. Like, I like the ability to create a character because I like D&D. I like being able to apply my own beliefs into this thing. And so at least Skyrim has that over The Witcher, and that's, something that you can get from that,
I mean, the D&D elements are something you can see all the way back to the Arena Day. I mean,
Yeah.
they are very clearly a group of developers who were interested in D&D
While they were making
properties.
sports games.
Yeah, which is the
That's
wildest
the whole
thing
reason
to
why
me.
they made Arena is they
that-
wanted to make a D&D.
Yeah, they're like,
we
fuck
we
sports.
started this
Without the D&D
conversation
license.
with a off-brand Super Nintendo football game,
Yeah.
and we have evolved to one of the most complex RPG fantasy games.
That's pretty incredible.
That's wild for a company to make that transition.
They finally got to make what they want to make. And maybe that's why they do so good with these other properties that they license to. They let them make the games that they want to make. I mean, id Software, it makes sense that this guy works with John Romero because both of them have big egos, it seems like. And they're like, okay, yeah, do your own thing.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that to sum up what Bethesda is good at, they're really good at like setting trends, but a lot of times it takes other developers and other studios to perfect those trends. That's why New Vegas is better than Fallout 3, because Obsidian was able to take the template that they used for Fallout 3 and just improve upon it, improve upon the story, improve upon the shooting a little bit. I mean, the shooting's still not great.
We've been going on here about Bethesda. It seems like obviously they're a big player in the game industry. They've inspired a lot of things. They've started a lot of trends, you know. And now they're not only developing, but they're publishing a lot of properties that we really care about. You get Dishonored, you get the Doom series is coming back now thanks to them.
Again, the normification of video games, man.
Yeah, you know, developer turns publisher, you know, and it's
But
just
they're a real big player in the games world to this day. So,
and they're they have their blemishes. I mean, releasing Skyrim 7 times, but I think they're one of the safer AAA developers. They're not loot boxing you to death. They did release a horse armor DLC, but besides that, they're pretty much trying to give you the best value they can, except for releasing Skyrim 10 times.
Well, a lot of the elements of DLC that they have, they're still going to make everything available through play. Like, there's nothing that you can get cosmetically
Hidden behind a paywall.
exactly, which is the end all be all of video games today. I mean, if you're not going to Shanghai me with fucking extra $30 on top of the $60 I played for the game to begin with, I'm gonna back you as a company.
right.
Yeah.
Well, so for Fallout 4, they had 2 DLCs that were extra story content. They had Far Harbor and Nuka World, and then they also had some other DLCs that added content for the base building aspect. And so if you didn't enjoy the base building, if you didn't do that, you don't have to get those. They're not necessary to enjoy the game, but they just add a lot more options for base building and stuff like that.
Do you ever check out that mobile game, Fallout Shelter?
Mike, I'm very
Shelter.
excited to say that it just came to the Switch.
Really? It's on the Switch
So
now.
I just
So also
downloaded
is
it
on
and
your
started
phone.
trying it. It is a mobile game, particularly on your phone.
Yeah, it's not bad for a free-to-play mobile game. I enjoyed it. I played a little
I
bit
enjoyed
of
the
it.
comedy. The humor of it was very good.
The writing and the tone is very good.
I mean, I think the humor of the Fallout universe and to an extent the Elder Scrolls universe as well is something that they don't get enough credit for. Like the Pip-Boy, the Vault Tech, all of that is so fucking funny
Absolutely.
and so
Fallout
fresh.
definitely has an aesthetic. I think it's getting a little repetitive for me, though. Like Fallout 4 didn't do enough to differentiate from 3 and New Vegas.
You've
in
heard
my
the
opinion.
jokes, the gimmicks kind of over for you?
Yeah, it's like I've played the same thing. Like, yeah, there's Nuka-Cola, there's your Pip-Boy, blah, blah, blah. Fallout 4, when the trailer came out, I was very hyped for it. Upon release, I was pretty disappointed, if I'm going to be completely honest.
I'm sorry. I'm hearing here that you're had enough of brown textures. Is that it?
Yeah, and
you
I
don't
mean,
want more gray and brown?
I did like the look of when I saw in the trailer that they were doing Boston. I thought, oh, this could be cool, but then it
fuck
still
Boston.
wasn't great for me. Yeah,
Fuck Boston.
Unless you live there, listen to our podcast, like and subscribe, give us an iTunes review. I love Boston.
fuck
Thank
your
you.
sports
but
team.
otherwise, fuck Boston. I love the trailer itself where it was like, well, I'm the kind of man who, like the
Yeah.
very true. It was a
that
great
kind of
trailer.
aesthetic just hits
It got
to
me
my,
hyped
like,
to play it, but then
Yeah,
when I
exactly.
actually explored the world, I was like, a lot of it was very drab looking. And now that I'm seeing the Fallout 76 trailer, I'm getting hyped for that. But then when I see the gameplay, I'm like, this looks exactly like Fallout 4, but just with local, like, multiplayer.
But don't you love West Virginia? I mean, isn't that why we're here? Mountain Mama?
yeah.
West Virginia.
And the other thing I wanted to mention about these games is that a lot of people say, oh, their engine is out of date, like their graphics don't look the best anymore.
You've been saying that.
Yes, I
That's
have been
very
saying that. But one pro about their engine is that because it's so simple, it's very easy to mod, and there's a huge Skyrim modding community. There's a Fallout.
They make
modding
that game
community.
look gorgeous.
They've always
Skyrim.
supported that, too.
Yeah.
They never try to lock people out.
right.
The
and
most modded game in history is Skyrim.
Wow.
yeah, maybe Minecraft.
No, I mean, at least according to the
internet.
facts I looked up on the internet, that there are more mods for Skyrim than any other game today.
I've seen
Sure.
people bringing in Halo 2 character packs. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Thomas the
You
Tank
can have
Engine,
Randy,
the big one.
Randy Macho Man
Savage.
Dragon.
Oh yeah.
That is my
Dragon
favorite
really
mod.
scares me. I
It's the
hate
Macho
that.
Man Randy Dragon, yeah.
And that's
That
another
video.
thing that could add, 50 more hours to your gameplay, and your enjoyment of the game could be through mods if that's what you're into.
When I was playing Oblivion, I was doing my own mods. I would reskin my own armor. Like, I wanted it to look a certain way. I would open it up in Photoshop, skin it, and install it, and then I could have the exact suit I wanted.
Wow.
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting that I know about the developers is that when they were creating the Elder Scrolls world, one of their biggest thought process was, what if Star Wars was a fantasy-based property as opposed to a sci-fi-based property? I think that really rings true in a lot of A, the mods, and B, just the gameplay in general. The world they've built has a lot of those fantastical, otherworldly elements.
I could be a scum rat thieves guild runner. You know, I could just steal stuff, or I can be like a fancy lord, a knight, like a Jedi. Basically, you could
Smuggle all day, baby.
And to bring up another franchise, before they made Skyrim, they were actually in talks to make, instead of a new Elder Scrolls game, they were going to make an Elder Scrolls style Game of Thrones licensed game.
Oh my god!
They were in talks to do that, but eventually they just decided to make a new Elder Scrolls and they made Skyrim instead.
And Telltale got the rights to another Game of Thrones Telltale story.
But I would still love an open world RPG Game of Thrones game. I would play that so much.
just RP that you are the Lannister, and
Well, no, I wouldn't want to play. I would want to play a RPG set in Game of Thrones where you're not one of the named characters in Game of Thrones. You're just a guy who you could be a peasant, you could be a sellsword, you know, something like that.
Put me on that wall, baby.
so we're talking Game of Thrones being brought into like the Skyrim engine, how that could be. But what would it be like if a Bethesda game became a TV show? We know we're getting a Witcher one. What if
Or
we
a
had a
movie.
Bethesda show or a movie? Right? How would that be? So let's jump in there. Let's talk about the other types of media.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about Bethesda in the movies.
All right, so we got Bethesda. They make really deep worlds, but you know sometimes you want to be able to explore them deeper than the games sometimes maybe allow you to. So what if we had the film series from a Bethesda game? What would that look like? There's been nothing yet, correct?
Not that I know of. I don't think anyone has ever licensed these games to be made into movies or anything like that. But it's something that could happen down the line. Who has any thoughts on some movie ideas of what they'd like to see from a either an Elder Scrolls or a Fallout movie?
My problem with that idea in general is we had that D&D movie in the early 2000s.
Loved it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Well, there was one more before that that came with your second edition box set. It was very weird. It had a man scorpion.
Loved it.
That was great.
So this is the kind of thing where it's like in a universe where you create your own character, you follow your own story. How are you going to satisfy an audience in a way that is fulfilling to someone who has played the game? Personally, I think Fallout lends itself to that world building. I mean, the Vault Tech stuff, like, it's so cinematic to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know if people would be satisfied because it's not the story they created.
Well, something they could explore with the Fallout games, something that we didn't mention. If you've played the Fallout games, you might know this. A lot of the vaults that were set up by Vault-Tec are actually social experiments, and they do different weird things where they experiment on the vault dwellers.
It's like Stanford Prison Experiment.
It's almost got a Purge feel to it as well.
And each vault had its own different experiment they were trying to do, and it kind of comes out through the story in these games that they're doing different weird experiments on people.
See, something like that, and Joe, you really beat me to the punch on that, because I agree. A Skyrim game, we're just seeing the Battle of Helm's Deep again. You know, it's all going to be Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Fallout, that just lends itself to such a rich world, and that's something that you could see is somebody messing around with one of these vaults, a singular story set around that. I would be fascinated by that.
Where are my ghouls at?
It's like a Mad Max with like more charisma.
Mad Max
Not that
with,
Mad Max
again,
is
that great
lacking.
art direction.
And
No,
sort of
but it has its own
lighthearted
aesthetic.
tone to it a lot of
It gets a
times.
little bit more lighthearted with this weird 50s aesthetic. It has like a different flavor of that wasteland drama that we've seen so much of.
Yeah, I mean that Cold War level of aesthetic and like the 50s, like the greaser. I mean the tunnel snakes. Like,
Yeah.
is your lead character going to be a tunnel snake who's just out on the docks trying to make his world go through in the Fallout world? You know, like it's all kind of
That'll be the number 2.
like
Yeah, there we go, the sequel.
project.
Yeah, but I wouldn't count out a Elder Scrolls game. I mean, you saying it's a lot like D&D or
Or a
Lord of the
movie.
Rings, but there is a ton of established lore in the Elder Scrolls series that they could draw on. Not necessarily Skyrim, but it could be more like the Oblivion plot of where these portals are opening up everywhere.
Like Dungeons and Dragons, is there sort of a narrative character like Dritz Duardine, who writers have sort of anchored the universe around for Elder Scrolls, or no?
Who is Dritz Duardine?
Oh, are you kidding? He is the
Who's
dark.
Dritz Duardine?
Listeners, you know him.
You absolutely know he is. He is the anchor character for a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stories. He's a dark elf with an incredible past. 1,000 novels have been built around him. But is there a character like that for Elder Scrolls in the books?
Well, in Elder Scrolls, you've always played as whatever character you wanted to play, but you are given, like in Skyrim, you are the Dovahkiin, you're the Dragonborn. But the details of that character, it's up to you. So there's never been a playable character, I don't think, that has had like an established name in story.
As we talk about the normification of the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series, I wouldn't rule out any of this. I mean, I think 10 years from now, there will absolutely be franchises built upon both of these games.
There will be a Fallout movie. I will make that prediction right here for you guys.
Fallout. I think
Comfortably.
definitely
For
before
me,
Skyrim.
I'm just feeling a little Fallout fatigue. I think this whole Fallout 76 is making me feel the fatigue, probably
Damn.
more than most people. I mean, I'm kind of over it all. I don't know.
I always hated Fallout.
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe
what
that's
a
my
hot take at the end of this
Coming at the
podcast.
end here, I want to save it for my wrap up, but I don't know, man. Like Skyrim with guns is just not the most entertaining to me. Maybe that's it. I like the 50s aesthetic though. I like that Cold War era stuff. That's fun. I don't know, it never grabbed me. But you could do a TV series or a Netflix show.
Jacob, I felt that way that you feel about 76, but what we'll throw out to our listeners right now, what I want to talk about next is, in this movie segment, we checked out a small documentary that was released during E3, released by the No Clip Company, which is a online company on YouTube that does crowd-sourced documentaries that followed the making of Fallout 76.
Yeah, shout out to No Clips. They just do a fantastic job of building, again, like you said, crowdsourced documentaries that are giving us access to these developers in-house. I mean, we are in Bethesda Studios with the developers on the ground floor.
Unprecedented access, in fact, Joe. We recommend you check out. They have some Morrowind and they have some Skyrim wrap-ups as well. But this film that they released for the making of 76, this was the first time that they were actually invited to cover a game before its release. So this was Bethesda reaching out to them saying, you are the ones that we want to funnel our information through to show you how it's going to be impacted
Bethesda
by the
putting a lot
community.
of trust into them.
Oh, absolutely.
So much trust, in fact, that the first time Fallout 76 or Starfield are said on camera are in these documentaries.
Wow.
Oh, even the name themselves. Yeah, Starfield, the developer claimed he has never said it out loud. That was all fan speculation.
Right.
They've given no details. It's been 4 years now since he's even said it.
They have been talking about making a new IP for years, but it was very mysterious of what it would be. Some people thought it would be space-based, but we didn't know the name of it or any details like that. So
I could also see that new IP being jettisoned to the front of the line in terms of television and film adaptations.
yeah, and let me just
True.
throw this out here. They did confirm that Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and now Starfield all take place within the same universe.
Oh, what?
They're separated by-
What?
Yeah,
That's
they-
fucking dumb.
So
Well,
wait, hold on.
that's
Hold on.
dumb.
Back it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Explain how all that. Give me a
So this has
timeline.
been
Why
a
do
fan
they
theory
need
for
that?
years and years. It just ties all their three.
What is Skyrim in the
franchises
future?
together.
Well, that's what I wanna know.
How it works? Yeah, actually, Fallout is the earliest. Then Starfield takes place
You're
between Fallout and Elder Scrolls.
And
Elder Scrolls
Morrowind
is the far
where we're
future.
heading. Oh,
So here is my pitch. We will see in Starfield a tie-in directly
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Earth is a planet you can go to, and we see the Skyrim world.
Planet of the Apes.
Or-
Well,
yeah, the Elder
maybe.
Scrolls
I'm guessing
world.
there will be a lot of Fallout Easter eggs within Starfield because I think
Interesting.
Starfield takes place maybe a couple hundred years after Fallout, and then Elder Scrolls takes place a couple hundred years after Starfield.
So we're not talking a single Bethesda TV show or movie. The movie could explore all of them because
It
they're in
could,
the
yeah,
same
the
universe.
Bethesda universe.
Oh, an
fuck
expanded
that.
universe. Everybody
like that?
wants it.
The BCU, man.
the BECU?
Bethesda.
But I am
Extended
excited for
cinematic
Starfield. I think Starfield will add an interesting new aesthetic. I'm just tired of the Fallout aesthetic, and I know it was fun at first for me, but I've just like Fallout 4 really just gave me the fatigue, and now Fallout
It's
76.
so drab.
I understand the fatigue when it's a franchise that you've been so excited about for years, but do you think a general audience who might not have played the games and they're sitting in the theaters for, in Avengers 4 and they see a trailer for this movie called Fallout, do you think that would draw an audience? Because I think it would. I think that is something.
It absolutely would, yeah.
I could see a Spielberg type character filling that role of like, oh, from the creators of blah, 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 here is Fallout.
You need George Miller.
It could be done, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
if George Miller got
George
his hands
Miller's
on it.
Fallout.
I don't know though. Like George Miller, like he has Mad Max. Like we don't need.
Yeah, I would not need that.
We don't
guys.
want Fallout to be a clone of Mad Max.
Yeah, I don't
We
need
want
him to
have
It
its
already
own aesthetic.
is.
It is to a degree, but
No,
I would
but
want.
there's that separation of aesthetics. I'm telling
Yeah,
you, it's
true,
so much
okay.
more idyllic.
Yeah, but you could say that. But George Miller has also made
Babe Pig in the City.
Babe Pig in the City,
Happy
a
Feet.
failed Justice League movie. I mean, he
I just
obviously has the capability to work in a universe that isn't Mad
Absolutely,
Max.
and I do love. I mean, I love Mad Max, but I just think it's a Fallout movie would be too similar to Mad Max
For
for
his
the same
subject
director
matter.
to do it.
I'd like
you
to
know?
see somebody like a Denny Villeneuve,
Let somebody else
somebody
try
who
it.
just did a Blade Runner where
would be
he's
great,
really
yeah.
setting up, its own world. Gear that up further. Take me to Fallout.
Colin, I agree with you in my heart, but in my head, J.J. Abrams made Star Trek and Star Wars.
True.
Yeah.
I think Star Trek and Star Wars are different enough that it's. I think Mad Max and Fallout are more similar than because I mean Star Wars is more of a fantasy that takes place in space, right? Whereas Star Trek is a hard sci-fi, or that's what it.
But you don't think
should
Mad
be.
Max has a certain fantastical action adventure element to it that Fallout doesn't? I mean, there's no ghouls in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You just have Master Blaster. And
I mean, there
much
are-
more approachable, Mike.
Yeah.
There's a ton of influences from Mad Max within Fallout. I mean,
Oh,
the whole
for sure.
Raiders, the whole way that the Raiders look and stuff is
Marauders
straight
and
out
stuff.
of.
Yeah.
I think the Brotherhood of Steel could be a really interesting aspect for a movie to
Oh, the power
go
suit's
into
going to get in
more.
there no matter what.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, that's an
And
icon.
the
of
interesting
series.
That'll be the
factions that
first
they have.
trailer, is a power suit breathing to life like Darth Vader.
Let's
think
do
if-
this.
Yeah, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think if they do make a Fallout movie, the one I would be most interesting would be like a New Vegas type of story and setting.
They gotta add the
over a
Golden
Fallout
Knights
4.
faction.
Yeah, New Vegas to me would be the best way to do a Fallout movie.
See, I think you're jumping the gun a little bit. A New Vegas as the first installment to me would be like the Super Mario Brothers movie, where you'd kind of be like going a little bit over people's heads too far at first. Like I think it would have to start like every Bethesda property starts, leaving the vault for the first time.
Well,
That's how the
Fallout
trailer
is-
opens.
Yeah,
that is
every
every
Fallout
Fallout
starts with that.
You're-
So you
Yeah,
start
and
at-
every Elder Scrolls game starts with leaving the dungeon. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like, it would need to start
Except
with
for the
this is
terrible
the
opening
life
of
you had
Skyrim.
before.
I
So
won't get
Bethesda games are about being born into a strange world and finding your way. Wow. So deep.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
absolutely. Starfield could be interesting. We'll have to see what that brings.
So, are you looking for generic white male protagonist to take the
necessarily.
main, or what would you want?
A child.
Well, here's something I'll say about the 76 documentary, which again we recommend you watch. It really bummed me out that every developer interviewed was an old white dude.
Oh, every single one of them.
That's
the
like
only
a problem
young
within the industry. Right?
the only young or ethnically diverse people were all in the marketing,
Oh, yeah.
the QA,
Yep.
and the developing process, but not in terms of actually making anything, just in terms of like broad picture.
No, and I understand that this is a lot of these guys inheriting this. The documentary hits pretty hard that they all started in development on the early games in the
Right.
Skyrim series, and we're seeing them, or in the Elder Scrolls series, and we're seeing them develop out their tastes in Fallout. And also, you guys might love to hear this, that the development team is growing so large that they can actually manage to handle 2 properties at
Oh
once.
yeah,
That's,
and
why we're
they're
seeing
doing
development of
They've
Fallout
rarely done
76,
that.
Starfield,
and Elder Scrolls,
6,
exactly.
yeah.
Which is the first time they've done it as a company. Colin, I think we've talked about it enough. I'll definitely go ahead and share those links on Twitter. So when this episode comes out, be sure to hit our Twitter. You'll be able to find the links to the documentary.
I
and
think
stuff.
it'll answer a lot of your questions. I know a lot of fans were very nervous when Fallout 76 was first announced because of the multiplayer aspect. This thing gets into the nitty-gritties. It tells you that they're planning for about 24 to 30 people per server. That's the
it's
only
gonna
amount
be,
of human
small
beings
servers,
you'll
not
go
hundreds
at.
of people at the same time.
And that's more the niche stuff. If you're into more of the normie stuff, there's also a documentary we'll link out that's just the history of Bethesda as a company that hits kind of how they became the powerhouse that they are today.
But if you're someone like me maybe you don't have friends, you just want to play alone,
Oh no.
Oh no.
But I think Fallout 76, I think it'll be a good one-off, but I don't want the future direction of these games to go in that direction.
It's
not
hard
their
to
strength.
get anybody to commit to playing a multiplayer.
Of course, yeah, and that's just a
online
different
role-playing
experience.
game.
I mean, you wouldn't put hundreds of hours that you put into Skyrim if it was more of a multiplayer focused game.
Yeah, you do that with Destiny. You do that with Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So the two major properties we've hit here, Elder Scrolls and Fallout, I think we all agree that both of these franchises will at some point be made into television or film properties. What about some of the other ones that they've licensed, like Wolfenstein, Evil Within?
We already saw Doom.
Dishonored would be a great story for a TV series or a movie. I think Dishonored is a very underrated game in general and a great story.
Dishonored, incredibly cinematic, has a wonderful voice acting cast with celebrities. Chloe Grace Moretz plays the female lead role on that
I
show.
did not know that.
I had no idea. That's so cool.
And she's absolutely
Girl?
fantastic in it. Hit Girl herself.
Carrie.
As Mike just mentioned, the Doom film with The Rock, of course, I will always hold to my heart. That's another property we have
Cinematic
seen that
classic.
get so revamped in video games lately. They've made it so serious and taken it to the next level. You know there will be a Doom movie.
And that's kind of the normification of video games.
better bring The
Doom
Rock
is
back.
one of the first. I guarantee you, Colin, you're right. We'll see another Doom movie.
Probably, and I'm also surprised that there hasn't already been a Wolfenstein movie. I feel like that's a movie that could have been.
Hold on.
years
Do you
ago.
guys think there's something there that's kind of stopping them with the history?
What, we're sick
What?
of shooting Nazis in movies?
I don't know. Are we though?
Yeah.
Germany's sick of seeing about Nazis, and the
I
only thing
think they might
American
be.
audiences
Well,
think
the
about
German-
are the foreign market.
Okay, well,
Yeah, but I don't think Germany is one of the top foreign markets, is it?
No, definitely
It's not China.
that's
China.
true.
But no, I think the political climate in particular is perfect for a Wolfenstein game right now. I would go see that.
Damn.
Wolfenstein movie.
For a
yeah.
Wolfenstein movie, which is why the game came back into fashion.
And what I love about
that trailer-
Wolfenstein is that it has a very lighthearted tone while dealing with very serious subjects. It has a sense of humor, and I think that would work great in a movie.
I mean, the first trailer for the revamped game kind of felt like the Inglourious Bastards
Oh,
trailer.
absolutely.
Where it was like,
Definitely.
we're going to do one thing and one thing alone, kill Nazis.
That's right.
Ba-boom.
Which that's what the game is. So
Yeah.
take that.
And it's
tone.
actually great because the main character of Wolfenstein is BJ Blazkowicz, I think is his name, and they actually purposely made him a Jewish character
Oh, I
to
love
add
that.
to that aspect. of
Right.
it, yeah.
I mean, all my favorite heroes kill Nazis. Indiana Jones, Captain America, that's what they're all about.
Brad Pitt, just
Yeah.
Brad Pitt, the actor.
But what about Evil Within? I mean, as we're coming to the end of the movie series here, any other properties that Bethesda has their hands in that you'd want to see adapted? What are kind of our final thoughts on the movie section before we move on here?
Rage, the video game Rage,
Mad
is a
Max, you
series that
already have
they've
it.
sort of brought back. Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a lot of, what was that video game series with the guys blowing their heads away?
Borderlands. Borderlands was a
exactly.
fantastic series.
That, you know,
Well, they did make a Telltale Borderlands game.
Tales
which
from the
was-
Borderlands,
yeah.
incredible game.
It's kind of like a movie.
I don't see Rage really getting off the ground that much personally. That's an IP that they're trying to bring back in the video games alone.
Well,
so
that's an id Software thing.
Yeah, but they bought the rights and blah, blah,
The
blah,
guys
blah.
that created Doom, right? So like you're doing
well,
Doom
Dishonored
properly.
is id Software too.
Yeah.
Personally, I think Wolfenstein, Dishonored, both would lend themselves great to adaptation. Fallout, I would say Wolfenstein and Dishonored are better for adaptation than Fallout or Elder Scrolls, but Fallout could also work. Elder Scrolls, it's a little too, I don't know. maybe
We already
generic.
have Game of
Yeah.
Thrones. We've had the Warcraft movie
Right.
fail.
Yeah, and the
you know?
Warcraft movie being a huge failure, I think, is
And that
definitely
was
gonna
one of the
stop
biggest
Elder
games
So
Scrolls.
maybe
ever.
down the line, maybe after Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, maybe it'll add some uniqueness back into the series, and that'll make it more ripe for adaptation.
I do think Fallout is our best bet in terms of a movie, but I would love to see
Absolutely.
a fucking Wolfenstein movie.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Anything else on the movies? I think we've gone from the game to the screen. Now can we go from the screen to the page and see what about comic books or anything that might have inspired these series?
Or
right?
just novelizations. Absolutely.
Let's hit it. All right, Dragonborns, we are out here, and it is comic book time / literature. We talked about the film series potentially we would like to see from the Bethesda franchise, and now we want to get into the comics and or novelizations.
That's right. And there's not too much. I did do a little research on Elder Scrolls media, novelizations, that kind of thing. There were 2 novels made during the Oblivion period of Elder Scrolls that came out, The Infernal City and Lord of Souls. I have not read either of those. They're set 40 years after the Oblivion Crisis.
I took a look on them online. They are beautifully bound in a gorgeous set. If anybody's an Elder Scrolls fan, I highly recommend you add that to your library.
And then there's also the Skyrim library, which is the collected written works from within the Skyrim game. There's a ton of books that you can read that add a ton of lore. They collected all those and put them in a book.
Which, that is very fascinating to me, because that is one thing about these games is they have an entire literal library.
It's amazing how much work they put into it.
And
there's hundreds of books in Skyrim.
And as a Dark Souls fan, that's something I like. Like, you can just learn so much about the world by reading these books and little things here.
Yeah, Mike, that seems like something that would be right up your alley in terms of building the world throughout gameplay and then having that option to just go ahead and hit Barnes and Nobles and buy it.
Yeah, and just let me learn about the world. How deep does this go? It's like the Silmarillion. Of this universe, that's fucking great.
Let me pick up a tome that teaches me the songs of this world that I can actually sing in my real life.
And then I can
very cool.
RP my bard in D&D and use those songs.
If I could throw out my favorite book within Skyrim, which is The Lusty Argonian Maid.
Oh my God.
That sounds like something moms would buy.
That's a meme. I have heard of that.
That's
Lusty
a classic.
Argonian Maid.
Yeah, that's a classic Skyrim book.
If you're into lizard people.
Yeah, Argonians are the lizard people.
Jacob, can we get a brief synopsis of the book?
Well, it's just what it sounds like. It's a romance. It's romance literature within the Skyrim universe revolving around.
So it's a Fabio book.
I like to assume Fabio's still on the cover.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the Argonian Maid.
He just has lizard skin.
No, that's that one you gotta read before once your werewolf wife goes to bed, you bust out Argonian Maid.
So Joe actually tipped us off to a very interesting animated comic that you can find on YouTube. It's called The Senile Scribbles. And I love this series. I'll be honest with you, Joe. I've only watched about 10 minutes of these. I think I'm going to go home right after this. There's a 40-minute cut that has the entire first season together on YouTube. Wow. Check it out, guys. It is hilarious.
It is so much fun. As someone who has just watched countless hours of gameplay, you see these elements pulled directly from...
You will feel like you are watching it again. So it's animated in the same style as How It Should Have Ended, which is a very popular YouTube series. It's in that same Flash style, and it is just individual funny stories and simulations set inside the world of Skyrim. It opens with the actual load screens that you would see, dumb pictures of random items with stupid facts, like deers just kind of turning and looking at you slowly as it pulls away, and then cuts right into the meat of the jokes. It is
absolutely
hilarious.
Check that out.
Highly recommended for you.
Yeah, and even to go beyond like the details, all of those load screen and stuff are jokes within themselves. I mean, the meta in there is so funny.
I mean, Bethesda, they can make fun of themselves as seen by the Keegan-Michael Key skit that they did at E3 this year.
Yeah, they were finally aware of that. Yeah. Can we drop a link to that in the show notes?
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and put that out on our Twitter and Instagram as well.
And I'll throw it into the notes when we release it.
Take a look, Normies. You'll find it.
Maybe link that Fallout 76 documentary.
That's definitely going in as well.
For sure. And then as far as actual comic books, I did not touch any of the Elder Scrolls ones, but after finding out that the Dishonored universe was set in the same universe or under the publishers of Skyrim and Elder Scrolls, I had to get my hands on this comic. So I did grab it. Dishonored #1, released in 2016, Titan Comics. It was written by Andrea Olimpieri. And it's good. I mean, it's very good. Just a shout out to you, Mike. She actually wrote Dark Souls Legends of the Fire.
And that's Titan as well. All
yeah,
right.
Titan Comics we talked about in the Dark Souls episode. They have a tendency to buy up some of these properties that you wouldn't expect to have comic books. They've got a huge deal with Bethesda. We see, like Colin's talking about, the Dishonored books. There's also Wolfenstein books, Quake Champion books,
Enemy Within,
and The Evil Within. Yeah,
Evil Within. Yeah,
and Wolfenstein.
Well, I love this Dishonored book. It was very interesting. The world of Dishonored, of course, is steampunk magic mixed with assassinations, the underbelly of crimes.
Yep.
The book followed that perfectly. It picks up with the lead character set 12 years later after the first game, What I worry about is I haven't played Dishonored 2. I hope none of it's anachronistic or set against the comics because I'm really digging the story.
Yeah, and as a horror fan, I looked through some of the Evil Within books. They were written and take place in between the Evil Within and the Evil Within 2. I have not played the Evil Within 2, so I don't really know where the franchise goes from the end of the first one. The second one was kind of what we experienced in Dark Souls, where it was kind of generic horror comics, insert characters here.
Yeah.
But as a sucker for horror comics, I was really engrossed. I think these were better than some of the Resident Evil knockoff books I've read.
I'm really happy to hear that they were playing around with the lore in both of our comic books too. That's very true to the source material.
Yeah, they really expanded on some of the characters that you wouldn't expect to see, even in the Wolfenstein books, which I didn't get too in depth in, but it's definitely out there. I mean, if you're a fan of any of these franchises, hit up Titan Comics. I've really changed my mind on the company as a whole. I appreciate that
You saw it as a cash grab before, but now they're kind of niching things out.
Exactly. I mean, at first I was like, oh, they're just trying to make extra money, because with the Dark Souls comics, you see the credits for the game before the credits of the comic.
Right.
That changed in the Evil Within book. I mean, they really seemed like they were giving writers an opportunity to kind of play in these universes, and I appreciated that. So I think Titan Comics, go ahead and hit them up. They have a digital subscription service as well, so you can get some of that stuff coming right to you.
No, and that sounds like a really large catalog. I would recommend that for our readers as well.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I mean, they have a lot of properties that you wouldn't expect. Even Doctor Who and stuff like that, you're going to see through Titan Comics.
So outside of Titan and some of these, with the Dishonored comics and stuff, there's not really a lot here, though, right? For the world over here, unless there's anything I'm missing.
A lot of it is just fan-generated content, which you see a lot of.
On the internet, there's a ton of fan comics, fan animations and stuff, so it's definitely a big community.
This material's kind of too dense for the big two, Marvel and DC. You're never really going to see these guys picking that up. I almost guarantee that.
You got to build so much.
I mean, even for companies like IDW or Image, Boom, I don't see any of them really diving into this world. Titan, I think, is your only opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Fallout or Elder Scrolls stuff from them.
They're kind of the perfect size for that, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's close the comics, guys, and give our final thoughts on Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Bethesda in general.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is all there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like the breeze. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong.
So to wrap things up, let's just go around and quickly say what we are expecting out of Fallout 76, out of Starfield, and out of Elder Scrolls 6. Are you guys excited for any of these titles?
I think 76 is going to be shit. I think they should focus on the single player experience.
I have to agree with that.
Right? They're trying to spread themselves too thin. I know they're trying to expand the team to work on 2 projects at once. This feels like 2.5, like a multiplayer version here. Just trying to go into a realm that maybe you're not suited for. And that's pretty much it for that. And Starfield, I want to see space. I like a space game. Give me a good version of a Star Trek game, and I'll be into it. So we'll see how that single-player experience is, or if it is single-player, whatever. But I want to see a good space game. No Man's Sky is obviously garbage, and no one should ever play that game. So there's a space in the gaming community for it.
Ouch. I'll say that one of the things that I did learn in that documentary, again, on the making of 76, was that the game was spawned as the multiplayer for Fallout 4, guys.
Yes.
That was their intention.
That was the birthplace.
It's basically, to me, it looks like a DLC for Fallout 4.
And I think in their minds, almost they're thinking that too. Obviously, they want to give us a big experience. I'm going to say hit on that. I think it'll do pretty well. I'm kind of excited to experience it as well. The video really put a lot of my fears to rest that it was not a well thought out game. It seems like they're putting a lot of detail into it. I'm excited to try the new landscape, West Virginia. I think that's kind of a one of a kind, very very foresty, very different than, the other landscapes of Fallout kind of take the path of desolation. Boston, a lot more.
kind of
Fallout
foresty,
4,
yeah.
a lot more foresty, sure.
That's my problem. Is I think the
Last of Us was foresty, though.
In West Virginia look too similar.
Yeah.
From what I've seen,
I was
of it.
kind of surprised to hear you say that it was Boston.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 samurai games, 2 pirate games.
Yeah.
Video
Right.
games kind of have a tendency to follow
They follow each other, yeah.
I'm excited for the future of Bethesda. I'm excited for the future of single player games. Obviously, that's what we all want. You know, when they talk about video game developers, there's so many cash grabs, so many, idiotic experiences that they're trying to make to trying to link everything together. You're doing this, let this person know what you're doing. Bethesda does not do that. They make very straightforward, simple games, and I'm excited to experience that again.
Yeah, and I have to say Fallout 76, I'm leaning towards shit. I don't think I'll put the hours into it that I put into Skyrim or Fallout 4. I'll probably buy it. I'll probably play it for a couple days or a week or two, but I won't get super into it like I do their single player RPGs. Starfield, on the other hand, and Elder Scrolls 6, I'm very much looking forward to. They did say, so Fallout 76, I believe, will be the last game on their current engine. They're redesigning the engine for Starfield will be the first release on that, and then Elder Scrolls 6 will be the next one. And I'm hoping they do a lot to improve those games, and I'm hoping those are hits.
Joe?
I think there's a reason Fallout 76 is not called Fallout 5.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
damn
definitely
right.
a one-off thing.
I'm going to say it's a hit in that I think after watching the documentary that Colin and I had talked about, a lot of my problems with it or concerns were addressed as well. They're thinking long-term. They're thinking about how to address some of the problems with online gaming fatigue that you run into.
Does it scare you a little bit, though, when the developers themselves refer to it as not a numbered Fallout game?
Not necessarily, because I appreciate
It is
that
numbered.
acknowledge.
Not in its core series?
No, because it's not part of the core series. Like, those still will be a Fallout 5 after this, right?
Hopefully they only make 75 of them, so this one still stays lined up.
Relevant.
Just like New Vegas. Well, New Vegas, I would consider more in the main series than Fallout 76. It's kind of like 3.5. You could maybe consider 76 4.5.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, 76 I will definitely pick up. I liked Fallout 4. I liked that experience. Building on the things that I liked in that seems like a good thing to me. I do not consider it a Fallout 5, though. And I think that's kind of the difference in terms of, like, I think it's more akin to Elder Scrolls Online than it is Skyrim.
Absolutely.
And if people recognize that, I think it'll be a hit. The thing I'm most excited about is Starfield. A Bethesda universe that finally, to me, is one I'm going to lose myself
Well, and
in.
that we can get on the ground floor of. Nobody else has experienced these games before.
Very
And
true.
hopefully the aesthetic and everything works for me. I was a big fan of the Mass Effect series, so if it's similar to that, like Mass Effect
See, that
meets
was
Skyrim,
too dense for me.
something like that, I would love to play. But it's definitely from what we've seen of it so far, it looks like a very realistic space RPG without the more fantastical elements of like a Star Wars or something like that.
It seems unique, which I'm excited about.
Absolutely.
And the first generation of a new series is exciting to get on the ground floor of. So that's definitely something I'm going to be checking out. I think it's going to be hit because I think diehard fans of Bethesda are clamoring for a first gen game. And I think general audiences will be excited by a developer they trust making a game that kind of might bring back some of the ill will that was earned during like No Man's Sky. I think it all depends on what they're going to do with this new engine. Because the new engine is kind of going to determine whether it's worth your time or not.
For sure. I did want to say, so if you like the style of Fallout 1 and 2, if you want a top-down RPG that's not a fantasy, if it's more of a post-apocalypse, check out Wasteland 2, which is a crowd-funded sequel to the original Wasteland that came out, I believe, in 2015.
Oh, wow.
Damn. And like you mentioned before, Fallout was an unofficial follow-up to Wasteland.
That's right.
That's right. So Fallout, they didn't have the rights to use the Wasteland name, so they just changed it to Fallout, but it is a basically a direct sequel to Wasteland, but now they have Wasteland 2. So if you're into those kind of games, Baldur's Gate or like Pillars of Eternity, but you don't want it to be fantasy based, check out Wasteland 2.
It's all out there for you.
Yep.
we're in the golden age of video games. I mean, we're never going to have more than what we have now.
Right. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there real quick.
That's fine. Any other final thoughts on Bethesda? Because I feel like, honestly, for me, I want to see more. I don't want to see them re-releasing Skyrim on all these platforms. I don't want to see it watered down.
I think they're moving past that, though.
That's what I hope with the new engine.
I think the future's looking good for Bethesda. I think the new engine on the new gen of consoles will hopefully live up to the hype.
Yeah, them making that short kind of poking fun at themselves with the Skyrim re-releases. I think that was them acknowledging, like, look, we hear you. We're going to be better moving forward, and now it's time to move forward.
It's one thing to say you heard me, than to show me that you understand.
Which hopefully with Starfield and Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls 6, they will.
Yeah, and I'm most excited, honestly, for what they've licensed. I want actually Doom Eternal more than anything else. So
that's true. That's the
what I'm most excited
normification
about.
of video games, though. I mean, we talked about Resident Evil 2 being re-released at the top with E3 announcements.
I just want my childhood back.
Yeah, please.
All right, Bethesda, they're huge, one of the biggest game companies ever made. We got Skyrim, we have the Elder Scrolls series, and Fallout. But before we fall out, I want to shout out to all of the people who've been listening to Normies Like Us. You guys are showing up every week, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Your support means the world to us. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And if you'd be willing, just go ahead and leave a review on iTunes. It would help us out so much.
Jacob, thank you so much for being our special guest today and putting this episode together. Do you have anything you want to plug?
Nothing really. Just follow me on Instagram.
All right, and this is Mike.
And this is Colin.
This is Joe. I got wares if you got coin.
All right, and this has been Bethesda with us.
The Elder Norms.
Ayo, Bethesda boys.
Hey.
And now we can all sleep better, because we're not going to be kidnapped or replaced with robots or anything. So I'd say it's a pretty great day for the Commonwealth.